Welcome to Person-Centered Care Services emPower Hour with your hosts, Nisha Tumber, Jovenella Stewart, and Evelise Sagara, and your editor, Brendan Luca. emPower Hour is where we empower our community to create social change in the disability community, so let's go ahead and make an impact.
Hi everyone, welcome to PCCS's emPower Hour. My name is Nisha Tumber. I am the Director of Outreach and Engagement over here at PCCS, and I am joined by some pretty awesome co-hosts.
My name is Evelise. I'm the Outreach and Engagement Specialist here at PCCS.
My name is Jovenella, and I am the Communications Specialist.
This month is Mental Health Awareness Month, and we are joined by Andrea Bergnano. She is the CEO and owner of Therapy Connections. So, Andrea, if you want to introduce yourself and give a little bit of spiel about what you do.
A little history, a little something. I'm Andrea Bergnano. As Nisha said, I'm the owner and CEO of Therapy Connection. We're an online group practice. We service and support people in a multitude of states. We're continuing to grow. This August will be our 5th year in operation. We're completely online, started before the pandemic, and will be online long after. So, yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So, I guess if we could start with a quick check-in question. It is Mental Health Awareness Month, so it would be remiss of us to not talk about our own mental health. So, if you could rate your mental health today, 1 to 10, how would you start? And anyone can
I like
start.
this question.
I'm feeling like I'm at an 8. I'm feeling
I
good.
love that for you.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm feeling really good. I think bringing it to a 10 is when 5 o'clock hits, I'm going to go on my daily walk, and I think that will really boost me up a little bit today. Yeah.
Okay, anyone else? Anyone else?
I'll go. I think I'm also at an 8. I think we had a pretty rough start of the week, but today is like a pretty good day, and I think I'm going to do something for myself, like read, some things that I normally don't do. So, and I have a lot of extra time today, so that's where my mental health at.
Okay. I'm at like a 4.
Okay, I'm glad I'm sitting next to you. I'll rub off some positive energy.
I'm a little tired. It is Thursday, so tomorrow's Friday.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty exhausted. I'm not gonna lie. I've kind of been.
I appreciate the honesty.
Yes, I have to be honest. I feel a little burnt out.
Okay.
And I'm recognizing it.
Yep.
And I'm trying to implement daily routines to kind of deal with that. But gotta be honest, I'm a little.
I appreciate
Check
the
that a little
authenticity,
bit.
though.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I would say I'm at an 8 or a 9 now. I would say the past week was a little funky-dunky.
Same.
But today I started my morning the way I usually do. That makes me feel good. And I was able to cross things off my to-do list. I'm here with you guys, and that excited me today. And I'm just getting things done, so I'm feeling good about that. So I'm definitely in a better space because I need time for self-care.
Perfect. And so I feel like, Jovenella, you kind of mentioned, you have, a practice and a routine.
Yes.
In terms of 5 o'clock hits. So, what is that?
So something that I've noticed about myself over, I guess, the last 6 months is my need for routine. And I always used to hear people say, oh, you just need a routine. And I'm like, no, every day is different. I can just, take on the day as it comes. And I have realized, no, I really need structure. As I've been implementing more of that over the last few months, it's really helped me kind of give a clearer headspace. I've been doing daily walks, so I'm very easily enticed by challenges I see on TikTok.
Okay.
So the big thing I see is girls doing 75 hard or 75 soft.
Yeah.
So I've kind of done my own version of 75 soft. So every day I've been at least trying to close my fitness ring and getting my steps in. Okay. So I think yesterday was the halfway mark.
Yay,
so I'm already halfway there.
Okay.
So I think today is day 39 of me doing it. So that's why I look forward to it now, going on a walk and stuff. It's become a point where I'm oh, it's a habit now. I don't even have to force myself.
And that's habits take a little bit of time to build, but now it's second nature, it sounds like to you. And I think setting up, no 2 days for me are ever the same, but I make sure that the morning and the evening are, so that my brain is able to have at least a grounded state, right? You need to be grounded in order to hit the ground running of all the things. I know that you guys have full plates too. Setting up a routine is super crucial to be able to have that good 8 feeling that you're having today,
Do you ever, as someone who promotes self-care and stuff, do you ever struggle with it yourself?
Oh.
It's
for sure.
It's not second nature for you.
No. I mean, I would say self-care is second nature, but I also, at times, I definitely struggle, but I have a really great support system that will like call me out on my stuff. They're like, you haven't answered text in a little bit, and I know that's your pattern of when you're burnt out. What's going on here? And so they'll text me and they'll check in. And I think that that's really important to have that support system and kind of tell people like, hey, this is what I need when you're seeing this happen. Sometimes when I have a busier season of life, I put my own self-care on the back burner because there's just so many hours in the day, right? And I think that that's what's kind of happened recently. So a month like May, to remind us, every month we should be aware of our mental health. But when we have a month dedicated to that, it's really helpful to like set the routine, not just in January, but like, you know, when everyone else does, but in May, right? Like setting what that routine looks like and just a reminder. I take at the end of each month a reflection of what I did well for myself that month, what I maybe struggled with. So I kind of checked that for April, and I'm like, ooh, we gotta work on some stuff.
Yeah.
We'll do that in May, you know?
So, like, what are some signs of, like, burnout? Like, what does that look like? How does it present itself? And how can people kind of reflect on it? Because I think when you're in it,
yeah, you don't know.
You don't know. And then, like, when you're, like, at an 8, you look back and you're like, hey,
yeah, what was happening at a 4? Yeah. That's really different for everyone. Like I said before, I know for me, I'll like stop answering certain text messages of mine just because I don't have the bandwidth to like have the social battery to like check in with other people or even answer like, hey, how was today? So that's like trigger points for me. I tell people all the time, I'm not necessarily like a Dear Diary person, but journaling is so helpful, even brain dumping, because you're able to track those triggers a little bit more of like what your burnout is. So for example, not to call him out being a 4, but like thinking about it, right? Like, and you don't have to share this now, but what is it that's having you at a level 4? Is it that you're noticing sometimes that you're snapping? I know for me, it's like I'm snapping and short-tempered, like with my husband especially, because he's the easiest target. So I noticed that for myself. I noticed that I maybe am not drinking as much water because I don't make time to. I noticed that my to-do list piles up because I'm wanting to sleep a little bit more. I notice those triggers for me. Each person, it's individual. So that's why journaling is important, because then you're going to see like, oh, I napped so many more times on this day, or like I didn't nap at all, and I'm extra baggy in the eyes, you know. It's very different for each person.
I feel like if we were to do a little diagnosis with me, let's talk about it, girls. I feel like a trigger for me, or not necessarily a trigger, what I recognize is I value being productive, and I know that there's a lot of like things associated with that. I don't want to get into it.
We won't dive too deep.
But like obviously feeling productive makes me feel good, right? In general, but specifically with work, I need to have things done. When it gets to the point of like, I'm tapped out, I cannot work.
Yeah,
and
freeze.
Avoidance is the number one thing I do. Like avoid, but then like even if I'm laying there, it's in my brain. So it's like the worst type of avoidance.
Because you're in a freeze state.
Yes.
And that has also a lot to do with like imposter syndrome, right? So like if you're not going to do all these tasks and do them perfectly and to like the best of your ability. I kind of know you guys a little bit, right? If you're not going to do it like the very best, then you're like, why am I going to do it at all? Because I don't know. Because I do this too, right? Like I'll put off a task that I'm like, I have no idea what it is. It's going to take maybe 10 or 15 minutes to research. I don't have the 10 to 15 minutes in this week for me to even sit there and learn a new skill. So I'm going to keep putting off. And then now I'm sitting in ashamed because I owe someone a report or something. Let's say
like a response,
right.
Email response.
And I can't do it because it's not going to be the right response or the right thing. So I'm sitting here and frozen because I'm like, oh my gosh, now I'm embarrassed that I didn't get back to it, you know? But that's you like sitting in freeze mode. So there's a lot of research to this, and not enough time about it today. I will say I have a very, very good friend who talks about like polyvagal theory, and I think it's great for people to be more informed during Mental Health Awareness Month. We have the vagus nerve, right, that like runs up and down our body, and signs are sent throughout our body because of that. So like exhaustion is one of it. Like your vagus nerve is now running on E, you're tapped out. I'll give you guys, her name is Gabrielle Giuliano Villani. I'll give you guys tons of resources because there's a lot of research behind that and how we can stimulate that so that we're constant on a even, steady state of go and not hitting that freeze. Or when we're hitting that freeze, understanding how we kind of get out of that. But also remembering too, rest is productive, right? Rest is our productive way of re-energizing that battery so we can go. But it has to be true rest, not rest of like the hamster wheel.
Yeah, it
going,
does feel like that. And I think I would like to hear everyone's perspective on this, specifically about not necessarily toxic workplace cultures, but like the toxic mentality in terms of what productivity means in the workplace. And like how you said, and even how I said, I'm like, you know, there's so much guilt of like, I didn't respond to this email. And then it eats at you. And then you're like, it's been 48 hours and that email is sitting in yesterday's inbox and I see it, but there's so much shame now.
Right.
Like, why do shame and guilt and whatever else, like those like negative-ish feelings, why do they exist in the workplace?
And it's no workplace in particular, right? Like, it's just like work culture here where we have it, but like in America, for example, right? I don't know because I haven't worked in other places, but I think it's like this demanding pressure that society-wise, not just you yourself, but society-wise, it's if you're not productive, then you're not of value and you're not doing, and then you're lazy, right? Where it's reality of things. I used to be like that. Whereas I'm like, oh my gosh, if I don't answer this in 48 hours, oh my God, that's so mortifying. There are some times that I'll respond and be like, I'll get back to you as soon as I can with an answer. And it might be a week because realistically, I have so much else on my plate that I'll be honest, and I don't want to like respond to it. Right? I even did it to you guys. I'm like, hey, I definitely forgot to like respond to this. But look what happened. I'm still sitting here, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's almost kind of, not that everyone shouldn't respond to emails, right? But it's almost like when that happens, reflecting on the response that comes back to you if you don't answer that response in 48 hours. Are those people like never talking to you again? Are you losing a contract? Are you literally none of that is happening. The world's not going on fire because of that. But I think we have shame and guilt because we're setting these unrealistic expectations that we also think other people have on us, and we want to show up and show out to be able to like meet those. We also live in a society that you, not necessarily here, but it's just anywhere, you get a promotion based off of how hard you work. So you overwork yourself to prove that you can do it, but all that you're doing is putting further work on yourself, and you're not going to work a 40-hour work week. It's going to be like 60 to 65 hours then at that point, and if you get promoted, 70, you know? So I think that's a big piece of it, is that like you're working towards a goal of like being seen.
And then how do you like deal with that?
Like work through that?
Yeah, of course it's okay to like have professional like goals, but then how do you work through like, but this is not all I am?
Therapy, first and foremost. Just me being an advocate.
Yeah,
that's all
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
I will say for myself, that took a lot of therapy because that was like me. I mean, at least we've worked. You had seen like I would run myself into the ground. I would be waking up at 5 a.m. finishing the workday at 10 p.m. and going again and leaving no time for like other people. But I worked a lot to like understand everyone is replaceable at a job.
Right. 100%.
So what are you leaving with your mark on this earth if it's not going to be work outside of that? What are you working for? Sure, we're working to be able to pay our bills, but like what bills, right? Is it the home that you enjoy, and are you actually enjoying it if all you're doing is working? No. Right? Is it the bills for you to be able to go out, maybe say, let's even once a month, right? Are you even doing that then if you're working and working and then not taking the time to enjoy the money that you have? I know in this economy that's a touchy subject, but like even still, you know, it takes a lot of therapy and working with your therapist of really defining who you are and what your values are. That's why those hobbies are so important. Walking, right? Every day, like leaving that into your day-to-day and turning the clock off. Because guess what? The work in any field that you're in is always going to be there. It's always going to be there. So if you're just going to continue to keep doing it and only focusing on that, you're never going to be able to live your life outside of that. You know, it's really tapping into and defining who am I? How do I define that without bringing up the word work? Or even like you and I, like social work or mental health professional, right? Like how do I define myself outside of that?
I love when you say like nothing is on fire, because that's one thing that I've like really taken away. Because being in this field, it's hard. We're working with people, right? So it's hard for us to turn off our brains at a certain point because you feel that guilt of, if I turn off at 5, what if somebody needs me at 6? And then what if I don't get to them at 6? And
what happens then?
But then you kind of have to break it down to a point where it's like, nothing's going to happen. Someone else is going to help them, or it's going to be a tomorrow problem. And I think I have had experiences, not here, but in my past jobs where like people were working from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. and then they expected that. So then I put that pressure on myself to do that. And then coming into PCS where it's like nothing's on fire. Like your mental health's important. Like you need to take break, take PTO, like do these things for yourself so that you can provide the quality services that you are already providing. But it was hard for me to get over like no, it's okay. Like, turn off at 5 o'clock, especially now, like, working from home. You're working
Right.
from home in your own space.
You need to compartmentalize too.
Right. And I have, like, now my office where, like, when I'm
Yes.
done, I close the door.
Yep.
Because, like, I don't want to go in there. But if I didn't have that office, and let's say I was taking meetings in my bedroom or my living room, it's hard to separate that, like, when I'm home hanging out and watching TV, or am I home working?
It's good what you said too, right? Is, okay, if I don't answer them, what's going to happen? Answer that. That's
Right.
how you answer that. What is going to happen? Well, likely they're going to have to call someone else or call an emergency hotline. Okay, problem resolved, right? Like, if we're talking about like navigating working with a person one-on-one who's going through a crisis, right? I just actually did a presentation yesterday, and I talk about in my private practice, clients don't call us after hours. We're not a crisis center.
Yeah.
They have a crisis hotline for that reason. We work with them one-on-one in the session and then see them the following week or whatever the cadence is. But if they need me after hours, they can contact a hotline if they really, really need someone, right? Because that's not within the role and what our therapeutic relationship is. And it's important to keep that so you don't near burnout again. You know, like that's
Like
where
setting
burnout.
boundaries.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's where burnout comes into play. So it's asking the question, all right, if I don't answer them at 5, what happens? Run through that scenario, and guess what? The answer is never going to be I have to answer them at 5.
Right.
It's just not. You know?
I don't want to speak on behalf of all of us, but I do think I am speaking on behalf of all of us in terms of like PCCS being a relatively like healthier workspace,
yeah.
like compared to other places that we've been to. I've been in organizations where like my supervisor was very much working way after hours.
Yeah.
So now as like an aspiring, because I was in college at the time, I was like an aspiring professional. I'm like, that's what I gotta do.
Right.
And I'm
Right.
like, oh my god, at 7
Right.
p.m. I'm like, oh my god, this is kind of cool. Like, look at this. And then like 3 weeks into that, I'll never forget like the level of burnt out that I was in my bachelor's because I was in school full time and then I was working full time. But literally, I would be in a class because it was virtual at the time and working, and I was like, oh my god. There's no way this is gonna be the rest of my life, is it?
And then you're like searching for the accolades of like, all right, I'm gonna get a promotion, and like,
Yeah.
especially if that never comes, then you've just like tortured yourself
Right.
completely for what? And
So,
even
like
getting
a
those
$2
accolades, what does that
raise,
mean?
Like a $2
Right.
difference.
Right, and even getting those accolades, what does that mean? Like about you? Like, why is that also? Again, that's where therapy comes into play. Like, why is that so important? Why do you need that piece in
Right.
your life? You know?
How can workplaces and or like in general, if you can speak to unhealthy workplaces, what can they do to like support employees?
I think the biggest thing is like having the conversation and even understanding mental health like from the beginning, especially if like a place is not, let's say like PCCS where it is so mental health friendly. I think it's just understanding to destigmatize mental health and allow and know that it's okay for people to build in and take, let's say it's a company that has PTO, encouraging employees to take that, and even if it's not a vacation or something like that, truly encouraging and having healthy conversations when checking in, let's say with your supervisor, manager, whatever the title is, when you're having a conversation with an employee, not going into the nitty-gritty of their day-to-day, because I know people kind of have a hard time balancing that, but like, we're humans before we are any type of employee. So like humanize the person that's in front of you instead of just like running them into the ground. Running a report is like the easiest like example I can give, but like instead of like running them into the ground to do a report, right? Sit, get to know your employees, get to know who's there. I think having more, even if it's like quarterly or let's say, you know, twice a year, having a day where everybody can like come together just to get to know one another too, right? Like it helps humanize who people are. You guys here all know each other very well because those things happen here, you know? So I think that that's a happy, healthy way of kind of balancing that.
And I think it's so hard to like sometimes not talk about work when you're around like colleagues. We had an event for work and we were at like a luncheon and I was surrounded at a table with a bunch of other colleagues and the temptation to be like, yeah, can you believe that's what happened like earlier in the day about like XYZ thing at work? And I'm like, I literally have to bite my tongue to refrain myself. I'm like, because why am I developing that culture? Like I'm contributing to it.
Right. But that's good that you realize that though, you know, like, and you stop yourself. Because then it also like circles back then to you that like you're just going to stay
that's all I talk about and think about.
Yeah, that's right. And it's going to stay in a state of just like negativity like while you're here, and then you're going to like grow resentment for the burnout that you have contributing into that when really you created it, you know?
Right.
But that's good you realize it.
Relationship building specifically, I'm like, I need to get to know this person.
Yeah.
You can just start a supervision, for example, and talk about whatever your agenda says, but it's a completely different conversation to like, hey, how was your day? Like, what's going on? How are you?
Right. What were like the glimmers in your week this week outside of work? You know. Maybe it was that it was sunny 5 days a week, so you were able to walk 5 days a week. You know,
highlight for me.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I think that's important, and just like building it into that, because then employees get to become like more comfortable about that and being honest about what it is that they're feeling. Yeah.
So I have a question, like, for all of us. Like, when did you recognize your mental health was important? Like, when did you start caring about it? When did you say to yourself, like, hey, I should like talk about this?
I think I've always kind of realized, like, it definitely started in college for me, where I just like kind of entered the world of, you know, getting into therapy and stuff, but it didn't stick. I knew something needed to be addressed, maybe doing that's a quick fix, and I was like, okay, go talk and be done. I didn't really see like, oh, I have to maintain this. It's not like I'm going to go in, solve all my problems, and like walk away and be, you know, healed. So I think now, through even just working here or just having conversations like this, I understand more of the importance, and then taking the necessary steps to maintain the things that I'm learning, or like putting action to the things I'm learning. And I think that's kind of made everything come together for me.
For me, it was my very first panic attack in September of 2018. I'll actually never forget it. I was working full-time and like 3 part-time jobs at the time. So unfulfilled, but I thought like I was fulfilled.
Full-time and 3 part-time?
Casual, you know? But this is where I based my value on productivity of working, right? Like I wore that like as a badge of honor.
Like, yeah, I'm so hardworking.
Right. And I was like, oh my goodness, I have to go to the hospital. I'm having a heart attack. Me, licensed mental health professional. I'm like, no idea what a panic attack actually feels like. I'm like, no, it's a heart attack. I know it is. And I went, and they're like, this is definitely not a heart attack. Like, everything's good here. Like, you had a panic attack. And I was like, oh my God, this is it. Like, and that was like such a light bulb moment for me. I'm like, I cannot live like this. Like, I am way too young for this to be happening, for me to think that I'm having a heart attack where I'm just panicking. And I had no idea what it was, because I was just sitting, working, and I felt like the pressure of that. And I'm like, I gotta do something, because I can't continue to like live like this, because my physical health is also going to decline then too. And so it was, since that moment, I was like, okay, let's get a therapist, let's work on some things, let's do some self-care. And I've been able to implement that ever since. And I very proudly tell everyone, like, I have my own therapist that I see on a regular basis, because it's very important too. People will say, like, you're a therapist that has a therapist? I'm like, yeah, I gotta, you know, it's the products that I'm selling here, right? Like, I have to preach, you know, if I'm preaching it, I gotta also buy into it. So it's very important to me, and I adore her very much.
Same. I love a therapist.
Yeah.
I should send her this podcast. She's gonna be like, see, Nisha, why don't you ever believe in yourself? I'm like, I don't know, Dawn. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly when, but I do remember I started losing interest in like things I like to do. But like I would always used to race to go like see a sunset, and I like used to love to drive. I would go to like local places on Staten Island where I knew like these are my sunset spots, like nobody knows them. And then I stopped going. I was still socializing because I felt like I had to. It was almost very robotic. Like I was going to events and hanging out with my friends, yes. But those like small things that I was doing by myself for me, I stopped doing. And I was kind of like, I was in like a routine, but like an unhealthy routine. Like at the end of the night, like I wasn't even taking the second to just be with myself or decompress for the day. Like I was just going to bed just because I was just so mentally exhausted. I just wanted to sleep, and then I would wake up and do the next thing. So at that point, I was kind of like, you know, why? I was trying to dig deeper as to like, why did I stop doing that? And then I would try to do it. And getting in the car was like, I don't feel like driving. Like, I don't feel like going to, you know, go see those sunsets. Like, I don't have the energy or motivation to do that. And then at that point, it was upsetting me because that was something that was important to me at some point. So then that's when I kind of like sought out, you know, therapy or any other like coping skills, mindfulness skills that would get me back to that point where, you know, even if I wasn't going to see a sunset every single day, at least once a week I was going. It was a nice day, I'm going, I'm sitting in my car, even if it's for 20 minutes, that's what I'm doing. So I think, you know, losing interest in what I liked, that's kind of, that was my point.
Similar to you, I had my first panic attack my freshman year of high school. So we were having a debate. So this specific teacher, not going to say her name, she split us up into 2 groups for a debate. And this specific class, all she talked about was Greek mythology. It was English.
Oh.
Yeah, that's all we talked about. Greek mythology. Like every story, that's all we spoke about. So she put us in 2 separate groups to like debate. I don't remember what the debate was. Like, but I was so unprepared. And unprepared because like I didn't, you know, class of 30, 15 each group, they all nominated me to talk. I said, no, wait. Like, this was before, like, public speaking was, like, and I think this this was what propelled me into public speaking, because she made me talk. And, like, the way, like, the debate would work is, like, you have that opening, right? Like, you know how, like, lawyers have, like, their opening little spiel. So that's how it started. And I started, and all I saw was tunnel vision. And I was literally about to pass out. Yeah, it was so, like, I never, ever experienced that. And I remember I wanted to cry. But the best part was that the second period was also an English class. Like, because it was all freshman English. That's all she taught. By 7th period, all the 6 periods that had English found out about what happened to me. No. And I was like, no way. And I was really, like, that's when I was, like, first time I really experienced, like, embarrassment that I cared about. Because I considered myself, like, kind of confident, like, don't really care what people think about me, but that was such a hit on my mental health and, like, changed my perception of self. Yeah, and that was the first time I had a counselor at the school, and I went to go talk to her, and I was, like, so upset. I was like, what's wrong with me?
Nothing. Nothing. You just had too much pressure. That moment showed me, like, I'm out of control of myself.
I'm not in control of myself, and I'm not perfect, and, like, that's kind of okay.
Because guess what? You're still here to tell the story, right? Like, nothing really actually happened.
Right.
Yeah. No, it's so intense, and it's an intense feeling, and also, like, not having support then in the school, like, is, like, really
and, like, everyone
hard.
Like, kind of laughing at you, and you're like, haha, yeah, I guess it was funny. Like,
you could laugh at them.
I still have friends that talk about it, and it's obviously not a trigger because they're not bringing it up, like, in that way, but they're like, remember? I'm like, yeah, I lived it.
Do you feel like that, like, impacts you now when you have to, like,
no.
speak about things? No? Okay.
No, I really just...
You worked through it then.
Yeah, no, I think specifically that moment kind of, like, showed me that, like, oh, it's just a confidence thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it developed, like, for me, like, I could talk about anything.
But that's where, like, I think, like, especially confidence, right? Like, we're all work towards, like, trying to be confident. I think a big thing, especially, like, in mental health, is, like, understanding the narrative that, like, imposter syndrome actually doesn't go away, right? Like, it's always still there. It just shows up in different areas of our life because we're ever evolving. If we were the same people that we were when we were 2, likely we wouldn't be here doing the things that we're doing, right? Like, at 2, we weren't able to sit here and have, like, this in-depth conversation. So there's a purpose in being able to grow. So imposter syndrome happens and will occur as you meet new feats throughout your lifetime, right? Like, whether it be in work, whether it be personal, whether it be anything. Even if it shows up in the smallest bit, it's combating that with, okay, well, I might be a little bit afraid, like, to do this, but I'm going to give it my best ditch effort because I want to. Nothing, and we've talked about this before, like, just in person, of, like, nothing in your life needs to be a have to, always changing it to want to, because then you're a little bit more empowered to, like, do those things, you know?
I think that's a big thing, is reframing, and that's a lot of what I've been doing, is trying to change my language, like not looking at something as, oh, it's a negative. It's like, no, that's a positive. If I feel that maybe I wasn't as productive for the day, I look at it as, oh, well, maybe I needed this time to either rest or catch up on something else. I didn't need to pile on, 10 different tasks. So I think for our listeners, that could be a takeaway, reframing your thoughts and just thinking a little differently.
Yeah, daily reflection of that, right? Like, what did I do today that maybe I could reframe it to not be so hard on myself. Yeah.
And celebrating, like, the small stuff. Like, I resonate with that so much because recently, like, let's say my apartment's a mess and I just do the dishes and there's still, like, laundry or I have to clean the room or whatever it is. Like, I'm celebrating the fact that even though I didn't do everything on my task list, like, I did something and, like, that could be enough. Like, even if I needed that time to rest. So, yeah, I definitely resonate with that because sometimes I get really hard on myself if there's overwhelming things that are, like, outstanding that I have to do, but just, like, taking the time to be like, you know what, I did the dishes and that's okay.
Right. I used to look at, like, I think you were saying about how we're ever changing, like, you think of a line of, like, who we are, or just in general of, like, a goal. I used to think, like, okay, you do this goal, the next. Whereas, like, then you're never done.
You're
like,
just trying to take off,
you're just
like,
trying to take it off without actually trying to absorb it. And I think the absorption of, like, energy and, like, who you're trying to be, rather than just, like, kind of taking it off like a check mark, it goes into, like, that devaluing kind of thinking and behaviors.
Because you feel that you have to, if you don't, like, because then what happens when you tick off all the boxes of that?
Yeah, then it's like, okay, what's next? And then you're like, and then I develop this thinking of, like, what's next? wants. And I hated that because then I was never content.
Right.
And it took me a long time to find contentment because I was always chasing something, whether it be the next promotion, whether it be, you know, anything, like the next purse I want to buy or the next, it was
and
just
you're
like,
not truly
there
fulfilled.
was no presence like within me. Like I did not feel like I was being present.
But that's like even a good like prompt, right? Like these are all, when we're realizing some of these things, these are all good journal prompts for yourself, right? So it's like, how was I present today? And if you can not answer that, you take that moment to be present. I'm going to get myself, I'm going to like sit down, I'm going to like do some mindfulness of like, all right, my feet are on the floor. Okay, I can feel my toes, right? Like, and just do a body scan so that you're able to be present. So like for me, it's like my feet are on the floor. I'm able to feel my hands on my lap. I'm able to feel where my toes are. I'm able to feel my hair, like just completely doing a body scan. If you feel like you weren't present at all, you know, and you're just rushing to make it through the day.
Yeah.
You know?
And like, so within your field, obviously, specifically, have you ever encountered like clients or people that like kind of have these misconceptions of mental health?
Oh, yeah.
What were they?
Every other week I meet with the Chamber of Commerce, and we go around the table and we talk about like referrals to like different businesses. And I always say like my tagline of like the best referral is anybody who's a human being in the world right now in 2024. Because the biggest misconception is that in order to get mental health therapy, you have to be in crisis mode or something happening. And that is simply not true. We are all living on this earth and navigating the world that every day throws something new at us, and we don't know how to do it. So I always say, if you're a human being in 2024, go to therapy. I'll have clients that come to me and it's like, I actually was thinking of not showing up today because I don't think I have anything to talk about. I'm like, oh, we're actually gonna dive into that because we've been working on like some of your past and those patterns. So like, let's talk about what you think was so like great this week, and let's build on that. And sometimes it'll come out that, oh, like actually it wasn't so great. I was just like masking and like putting it under the rug.
100%.
Yeah.
I was actually, I was on you, Giovanella. There are days when I don't want to show up to therapy. I don't want to do it. And it's like, yeah, lazy, right? Like, an hour.
But it's not lazy.
No.
It's because you're not giving yourself the time for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what I would do is I would purposely, the days that I especially don't want to go, I challenge myself and I make myself go. I'm like, well, why? If I'm choosing not to go, I'm already like neglecting whatever that thought is.
Yep.
So like I can prioritize that thought within the session and be like, I'm going to be honest, girl. I did not want to show up today.
Yep.
I'm like, and she's like, let's explore that.
Yep. But I think that's what it is like people wanting, like, that they're like, I don't think I need therapy anymore. And that's great, right? Like, the purpose and point of that is, like, to work so that eventually we don't necessarily need our therapist and we're able to, like, hone in on those coping skills. But I truly am a firm believer in, like, everyone can benefit from therapy in some way, even if you haven't been through a crisis. And I think that there's, unfortunately, still that stigma. I see it going away with younger generations, but I think that there's still that stigma of you're going to therapy because there's something wrong with you, and it's just like simply not true. Like the world actually is on fire. Like nothing's on fire, but the world is on fire at the same time, and it's like okay to get someone there to support you. I say I love looking at the younger generations because they're like, well, today my therapist said, and I'm like, oh my God, you guys love therapy so much that you talk about it so openly and like talk about having a therapist, and there's no shame in that. And I think it's like one of the most beautiful things like that I see from the younger generation. I'm like, that is so cool. You are so cool for going to therapy,
Watching that shift amongst like, even I feel like we've kind of lived it. Like where therapy was like, oh my God,
it was like taboo.
Within myself. Like,
Yeah.
I think back to, I think I started in high school, and like I would never tell anyone. I'd be like, no, I don't need anyone judging me or thinking like, I'm crazy. Now I'm like, yeah, I see Emily every week. Like, like, I'm okay talking about it. Like, there's like, what's to be ashamed of, Like, I'm kind of proud. I'm like, yeah, like, this is something I've kept up with. I've maintained for however many months. Yeah. So it's like an achievement. Like
it's like a relationship with someone, but really what it is a dedication to yourself.
Yeah.
Truthfully, and that's kind of how I view therapy. Like, obviously, I love my therapist, but like also like in turn, it's such an investment in myself.
Yes.
And that's why I can't stop.
But I appreciate you so much, like, saying the word investment, because I think that is one of the biggest barriers to mental health, unfortunately, is the cost of therapy. And I know and sit here as a person that is privileged enough to be able to afford my therapist. She's out of network. I recognize the privilege that I sit here with, that I'm able to afford her once a month. Some people can't, and some places don't accept certain insurances. And I think it's really important to figure out ways that if you are struggling, or again, if you're just a human being, recognize that you are worthy and deserving of investing in yourself in mental health therapy, even if it's the affordability of one time a month, right? Like making and setting aside the money for that and figuring out and working with your therapist maybe how to get reimbursed or a lower cost or something like that. Like it's important, and therapy is an investment and it is work, but I think more people also need to realize that too. So I appreciate that that was unprompted for me and that you said that, because it's true. It's
but worthy and deserving to invest in yourself. Like even that in itself sounds like it can be such a privileged statement.
Right, 1,000%.
Because like to be in a space, because very transparently, like I grew up in a South Asian household where like therapy was such a like
taboo.
It still kind of is. But like I'll tell my mom, I'm like, I'm talking to my therapist about you today. No, but
every mom thinks that, like,
she was like, I know you're talking about me, and I'm like, you're right. But it's so interesting because to see even my parents transition, because like as we've transitioned and obviously like have adopted therapy into our daily lives, both like my siblings and I, to see her kind of be more open and willing to the conversation of it. Not saying that like, you know, she's all the way out there in line getting her own therapist.
She's accepting that you're going.
Yeah, she's accepting that I'm going, and it may be like a silly like idea for some of our listeners who maybe grew up in a very positive household where those kind of practices were accepted. But within my household, it was such a transition, and it's really, really nice to see. And it's nice that like it wasn't even myself or my older sister that started it. It was my younger brother.
Wow.
And I was like, when he started it, that's when I was like, oh my god, should I do it?
I had a younger brother male going.
My younger brother started, and I was like, wait, is he onto something that I'm not onto?
Yeah.
Like, is he ahead?
Yeah. What's happening?
Yeah, so then I was like, oh wait, I should get into this too. And that's kind of what jump started it for us in my family. Yeah. And he was definitely like hush hush about it. But now it's very, very open. Like,
I think that's great. And I think, like you said, there's a lot of families, cultures and dynamics that don't necessarily preach and advocate for that. I mean, I'm a therapist, and even in my own family, love you, Mom, but she'll never go. Yeah. And I'm like, you don't have to have anything wrong, just go. Like, we have stuff in this family.
Just
like,
talk.
It's okay. You know, like, but I think it's, like you said, it is a privilege because there are a lot of families that don't necessarily encourage that, right? Because they still think of it or look at it. But I think it is a beautiful thing with the younger generations pushing the narrative that, like, actually I'm going, this is no longer a question, Mom or Dad or caregiver. I'm actually going, and we're going to set this as the tone because I want to or I need to, you know? And I think it's really just great to see.
Can you share some advice for anyone that may be listening that, like, due to the fear of stigma, due to, like, you know, cultural differences and just, like, fear in general of approaching therapy, like how can they begin to start that?
Whatever therapist you are with doesn't have to be the therapist forever. Like, starting with one therapist might not be the therapist that you keep forever if it's not a good fit, and no therapist is going to get mad if you decide to change that. Like, that's the first thing that I say in a therapy session. Like, we're here for you. If this doesn't feel like a fit, this is for your benefit. This is your safe space. This is your room. If this is not good, let's get you someone else that this is going to work to. So I think first and foremost, knowing and understanding that doesn't have to be like a marriage till the end of time when you meet with your therapist. I think finding a therapist of the type of therapy that you want to work with, right? So do you want a CBT therapist? Do you want a DBT? Do you want somatic based? Like, truly understanding yourself and just even exploring that a little bit of what are all those different types of therapy. And then if there's the fear behind being judged about going to therapy, take the first step and just explore it first for yourself before even telling others. And that itself could be something that you work through with your therapist. Of like, I was really scared to show up and come here and be judged by friends, family, or whoever. Can we maybe work on that as well as a part of like my treatment goals, you know, that bring that into the therapy room, because that's something too, right? Like, you're not just scared of like therapy and the stigma of that, you're scared of a lot of other things too, you know? So I think it's important. And again, just knowing you don't have to stay with that therapist forever. I've worked with many clients that I brought them to a point in their life, and then I'm like, okay, what you're navigating right now is not something I specialize in, and I wouldn't be doing you a service by staying with you as your clinician, so let's find you another therapist that can bring you through this next stage of life. And they're very open to it because the important piece is the client at the center of our work, you know? And
I think a lot of times, unfortunately, some people may not have the best first experience, and that completely changes their perspective on therapy in and of itself.
Yeah, we've had a lot of clients I shouldn't say a lot, but we've definitely had a handful that have come and they're like, I honestly am just like testing this out. And I'm like, that's okay. Like the most important thing in therapy, regardless of what your treatment goals are, your plan, you need to have a safe space. So if you're walking in there already not feeling safe, therapy is just not going to work. So we let them know that like, we're here for you to feel safe and let's figure out and work. And every client, even if they don't tell us that, in our intake, we ask them if they've gone to therapy before, what worked and what didn't work. Because we want to make sure that we're setting it up so that it does work this time around, or we find them someone that it will.
Is that the intake before they match a therapist?
That it's during their first session.
Okay.
Yeah. Because typically the clients that come to us already know which one of our clinicians they want to be with, or they're very open like to whoever, and whoever kind of accepts their insurance. And then we'll match them up based off of what they've told us if we think it's an appropriate person that can work with them. And then in that first session, they're kind of exploring those things.
If you had to kind of create like a starter pack for someone who maybe therapy's not on the table for them right now, like how can they start, I guess, addressing their mental health like within themselves? I know you mentioned like journaling, but like what other, I guess, either free resources or things they can do like journaling?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So there are a few, and I can give you guys like some things for you guys to share. But I would say journaling is always going to be my number one. I tell people, even mindfulness and meditation, which you can find on YouTube with a ton of videos of that. I would even say with that, starting with 1 minute videos. Like if it's not something that you're used to, because for me, mindfulness, like it took me a while to even work up to the 5-10 minutes at a time. So even start with 1 minute where you're being present. I would also say too, like looking at your support system and how often it is that you're saying yes to things that you really want to say no to, right? And not feeling that obligation of like, okay, I have to keep filling my plate with things. If you notice yourself like continuing to fill your plate and being unfulfilled, writing down all the areas of your life that you're in and like kind of circling the ones that you're no longer feeling fulfillment in and working through that and figuring out what shifts needs to change and creating a self-care menu. What I tell people is self-care is for yourself. It's not bubble baths and face masks all the time. I always say this, it's not bubble baths and face masks. It is whatever it is that gives you enjoyment. For me, that's woodworking. I like working with my hands. My family will always say like, you're always working on a project, because I enjoy it, right? Like I get joy out of that. So really looking at what it is, things that you enjoy doing. And I think it's working up to, if you're not doing daily self-care, at least weekly, and seeing how you can amp that up, because you should be doing one thing for yourself each day, whatever that is. If it's a 5-minute walk, if it's a mindfulness, always doing something for you to refill your battery.
I love that, because I feel like that can be the most daunting part, is like, where do I start? And like sometimes you don't realize like you do have some of the resources already readily accessible to you. You just kind of need that like push to like,
it's a reflection,
like a guide.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is like a starting point is like self-reflection, right? Like what are the things that bring me joy? There are definitely articles that have been written about self-care. So like reading blogs, different podcasts, even on self-care or mindfulness. Some Facebook groups too, right? Of like hobbies as an adult, maybe, you know, and because some adults that I have, they're like, I don't even know what my hobbies are. I'm like, well, let's get you some. Like, let's explore.
Search of mine.
Yeah,
like, I did look that up. I'm like, because I did struggle with that. Like, trying to find a hobby.
But that's it. So like, that's a good starting point. It's like if you don't have a hobby, like let's start there, you know. And if I say a hobby to you, like let's say I were to say like Zumba. Like, what's everyone's reaction to that? If you hate it, then we're not going to push you to do that, right? Like, maybe you want knitting or like jewelry making or something, you know, running, whatever it is, finding that hobby for yourself and starting off like once a week.
And I think also reframing having to do something, like you said, having to do something, wanting to do something. Like for me, I've been pretty consistent with yoga over the past year. I've had like some on and off seasons, but in the beginning I was looking at it as, I have to do it. Like, exercise is important. You have to exercise. But I didn't realize that I actually kind of love it. And it's okay to love something without punishing yourself.
The guilt.
And feeling like if you're not punishing yourself, then there's no like good in it, kind of thing.
Well, we were just, and again, I know this comes from a space of privilege. Like, I try once a month to get a massage, but at a point, I was really like beating myself up over that. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm wasting so much money on this. And again, I know that those are expensive, and I know I'm in a space and privileged to be able to do that, but I realize that's also it's a non-negotiable for me at this point, because it makes me feel better and it makes me be able to do the things that I want to do, and I'm able to show up and I don't burn out the months that I do that for myself. So if that's what I need in order to get me through the week or the month or whatever, I'm going to do that, because that's going to be invaluable to me. So it's finding those things that you need in your life that are going to help get you through the day to day, and allow those to be non-negotiables without the guilt, right? Like if you know that that's what's going to lead you to not burn out, or to be, lashing out at someone, right? Doing those things and finding what those are.
Well, before we kind of close off, I want to close off with our self-care menu. I do want to ask you a little bit more about Achieve with Andrea.
Yeah.
And because I know it's more than just therapy connections and stuff like that. So if you don't mind sharing a little bit about that and the work you do.
Yeah, so I started Achieve with Andrea in July of 2021, when I realized other therapists were struggling with knowing how to be entrepreneurs. And in school, they teach us to go into community mental health. You're a therapist, and that's all that you do. But I realized there was so much more beyond that, and I'm a person that loves to do a lot of different types of things. So I started Achieve with Andrea really to help other people that are trying to be entrepreneurs and do business coaching with them on that. That transformed into helping people with their social media. And then I also run retreats. So it's just wellness retreats. Sometimes it's one-day retreats. Sometimes it's therapist retreats in other places like Costa Rica and Belize. And it's just truly getting out of the day-to-day.
That's very cool.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I think I should do that too.
I feel like February of 2025, you guys should be going. I feel like February 2025.
Are you planning something for February 2025?
Costa Rica.
Planting the seed.
Costa Rica.
Oh,
it's planted. She's blooming right now.
She's blooming.
Yeah. So I'm the CE director of a retreat in Costa Rica in 2025 for Thriving Wellness Institute. So it's a nice long weekend in Costa Rica, and you get continuing education if you're a social worker or a therapist.
And how do you encourage young women to kind of step out of that comfort zone of I have a 9-to-5, because you're HR, you're CR, you're everything within yourself. So how do you step out of that mentality, and what advice would you give younger women who want to step out as entrepreneurs?
I think it's knowing. Everyone will give advice for entrepreneurs of know what your why is. What's your why? What's your why? I always say, know your who. Who is it that you want to be? For me, I stepped out of it. I left a very stable full-time job to build my own businesses, not knowing what that would look like. But I knew the who for me is that one day I want to be a mom. I wanted to have a flexible schedule, and I wanted to be able to have the idea of being able to run my own thing without necessarily having to answer or ask someone else. So know the who, know who you are, and then working towards that and truly creating a plan. That's something that I do with other people. Is I talk about it all the time on my own stuff. I set up a Trello board, and we lay out a plan of action to get you to that point when you're transitioning from a 9-to-5 to entrepreneurship. Or even if you're balancing the both, I always say there has to be a life-work balance. You have to put life before work.
Yes.
So how can we still incorporate that when you're kind of building those building blocks? And I love it. I love seeing other people live out their passions in that way.
So you do a lot of life coaching-ish?
Yes. Yep.
Very cool.
Yeah, and Achieve with Andrea. And we build things. We build whatever it is that people are
plant the seed and it blooms.
Yeah, just blooming all over. We're blossoming here.
Okay, cool. So before we close off, will you kind of guide us through a self-care menu so we can each develop one?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first thing is testing out for yourself what are the things that you enjoy, right? So Jovenel, I keep picking on you because you said walking, and I just know that that's yours. So you've now, let's say, placed that on your menu, but think about the other things that you haven't necessarily made time for yourself. So for me, my self-care menu includes woodworking and house projects because I genuinely like doing it. I also have added on my self-care menu seeing my nieces or nephews. I counted the other day between friends and family, I have 17 little ones. So I always try to see at least one of them a week, because that gives me joy. Because again, I'm off my phone, I'm off my computer, I'm paying attention to nothing other than them. So it's finding some of the things that are going to get you off the phone and off the computer. So it's those things for me. I would say it's also a date night with hubs, watching some reality TV, because I like to melt my brain a little bit sometimes. And for me, it's also Zumba, and then spending the time reading. So I think I've been fortunate enough that my library actually has a reading challenge, so I am guided for the type of book to read each month. So I'll spend time in my chair that I have in my den. It's my little spot. Everyone knows my little sanctuary. Nothing else goes there other than me and my book and my lamp. But I rotate those, and what happens is in the beginning of the week, I'll look at my week ahead, and I call it like CEO hours, where I'm the CEO of my life. I own businesses, but I'm also the CEO of my life. So I plan for CEO hours each day of like, what's this CEO hour going to be that Andrea is just with Andrea and working on Andrea, right? So I plan that for the week ahead, knowing that time is just for me. So it's testing things out, and then even in the note app in your phone, right? And then looking at the week ahead, when can I schedule those CEO hours for myself? What are you thinking about? I know you're walking.
Yes, so
To the moon, basically. Yeah.
if I could, I would.
I know.
So definitely walking. Like you said, I don't want to be on my phone. Like, I spend enough time on my phone, on the computer, so it's really anything where I can be fully present. I love scrapbooking, so when I can prioritize that, I'll do that. Enjoying your own company, which is something that I had struggled with. So now, tomorrow, my first solo adventure, I'm calling it. I'm doing something by myself. I'm going to go into the city, and I don't know if you've seen on TikTok, Bloomtanica. It's like this immersive like flower thing. I'll show you it after.
That's so fun.
Yeah, so that's like my first thing I'm going to go explore on my own. So I think that's like a new thing I'm adding to the menu. Once a month, take myself out and do that.
Date yourself.
Yeah.
You have to, right? There's a book called The Adventure Challenge, and they have it like for couples. They have it for
Is it
friends.
the scratch off one?
Yeah, but they have it for yourself too. Yeah, and that's a really good. I love that. I've partnered with them. That's a really good book to like just date yourself and give yourself ideas if you're struggling to even find things. But also too, like even if it was just walking and that's your self-care menu, that's okay because it's your menu. Like, you don't have to also have a laundry list of things. It's what you enjoy. But I love your dating yourself.
Thank you so much.
I think similarly, what you said really resonated for the self-care menu to like disconnect, not be on the phone. Something I'm very intentional about, even like in walking. I used to like listen to a podcast, and I used to like, because it's also like it was fun, but I also found that like I kept consuming. I kept consuming, and I wasn't allowing my own thoughts to kind of percolate.
Yeah.
And to do anything with those thoughts. So it got to a point where it was like mind numbing. One of my goals is I want to hit at least 10,000 steps a day.
Okay.
I've kind of been on track. Yesterday was 5,000, but whatever. A win is a win. So I'm trying to walk every day, but in conjunction with that, I'm trying to not distract myself. Like I won't even count walking Winnie, my dog. I kind of count that
solo,
because it's a distraction. Because then I can focus on her and what she's doing, and I find myself abusing that.
Yeah.
To like kind of like not be alone. So like I'll purposely go on a longer walk like by myself to try to just like to like recenter, to refocus and be. And like something, and similar to Jovenella, something that I recognize is really important to me, and I think because the weather's getting nice now, is like going to the city.
Okay.
And just like walking. Because I love walking in general.
Yep.
And now I could walk and shop.
I love that.
And like get a coffee, stop at a cafe, like see something new.
Right.
Go to a bookstore.
Right. Change up the scenery. You brought up a good point, and many people have heard me say this before, but I'm so frustrated that I don't know where I heard it from, but someone once said it and it stuck with me. We're human beings, not human doings. And we never allow ourselves the chance to just be. So it's really important to like integrate that, and walking with ourselves to be is so crucial. So I love that you said that.
Thanks. Honestly, now that everybody's talking, I struggle with like finding like hobbies and stuff.
Okay.
That's what it is. Like, my wife has a hobby, like my friends all have hobbies, but like for me, like I mentioned the sunset. Yeah. I do though journaling. If anybody has an iPhone, she tells me once a week, or if I go somewhere, it's like, take time to journal this, even if it's somewhere that I didn't want to be.
Is that
like
the app's name? She tells me?
No.
Oh.
I heard her my phone.
Is it the journal?
It's the journal app.
Yeah, sometimes we'll be like
reflections.
journal your afternoon walk. I'm like, how did you know?
Yeah, it says journal your day at 1:50 granite, and I'm like,
you're prompted to something, like some sort of prompt.
And sometimes I don't want to. And you could set like the time, like you could do it once a week, or it'll say like if you're at like a different location that you're not at, like if you're not home, you're out, it'll prompt you to journal. And I am a journaler normally, like I do like to journal. But now that I'm talking about it, I think I do have to like take time and find out what I like to do. Like even if it's, because I really do I like diamond painting. That was like my thing in December.
What is that?
So you have like a picture. It's almost like paint by numbers, but it's like little baby rhinestones. Yeah.
That
it's very
takes so much work.
But I love attention to detail.
I was gonna say, yeah.
So I was doing it, but then like I find myself like I have a half done diamond painting like in my house. So like there's certain things where like I'll be really into something and then I kind of lose interest like midway. So I have to like sit with myself and find out, or like when I am losing interest, like holding myself accountable, like why did you lose interest? Is it because you're not motivated, or is it because like you're not taking the time to actually finish a project?
Right.
Because that's a lot of things. I used to love Legos. I have half-built Legos all over my house because I don't
also
finish.
too, like being honest with yourself, if you really don't liking it, don't push yourself to finish it.
Right.
Either. Like be honest with yourself.
Yeah, but like
that's okay.
asking, like,
yes, sitting there.
What do I like?
Yeah.
Like, is it because I just don't like it? Like I thought I would like it and I
Right.
don't, or is it because like you're not taking the time for yourself?
Right.
So I do have to really like dive into that and kind of load up my menu a little bit more. But I just find that very helpful. Even if you're like, even you saying like, it's okay if you only have one thing on your menu.
Yeah.
Like in my head, I'm already thinking like, why don't you have a hobby, girl? Like, what do you do in your free time?
You gotta go to
But you should
Gateway
be doing
Park.
that. Which that's my favorite. That's my favorite
parking
sunset
lot,
spot.
and you see the sunset.
Yeah, that's my favorite sunset spot. That's just
But I think to your point with the journaling too, because I know I'm a person, we're on our phones and like computers all day, so sometimes I don't want to write anymore. Voice note it out.
Oh, yeah.
Like get those thoughts somewhere else, because these seep in through your body. That's how we get sick. That's how like other things like happen to us. Get those negative thoughts out, put them out into the world, so they're not staying up here.
Yeah, because screen time will call me out on my phone
yeah.
and be like,
Good.
you were on your phone for 8 hours a day last week. And I'm like, oh my god.
Oh my god, the Sunday recap?
Don't show
me
it calls
that.
me out every week. Every week it calls me out.
I had to put a timer on my TikTok on my Instagram, and then when it comes up, do you want to stop or resume for 15 more minutes?
And you're clicking snooze 15
I'm getting snooze actually. Don't remind me at all. What I started listening to, it was a more continued practice, and then I found myself pausing, and then yesterday I actually picked it back up, is I am affirmations on YouTube.
Oh, I was gonna say I have an app.
Oh no, I have the app as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
I have the app as well. But the affirmations on YouTube, it's like a 35-minute video, and it goes through so many different aspects of like life, like from sleep to work to like social life. And one of the things that it says is, I am courageous. I am brave. I am brave and courageous. And I'm like, yeah, I am. I'm walking. I'm like, yeah, I am. So like if I try to listen to that, because I'll go to like morning yoga, so I'll listen to that on the way there, on the way back, to kind of make sure I hit it. And I found that to be really, really
That's awesome.
It's such a, I really felt my brain like vibrating.
Yeah.
Because it feels like, oh my god, you're rewiring.
Empowered, yep.
The neuroplasticity
it's working.
is plasticity.
Yes. Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's really, really good. Yeah, I think that's like helpful, right? We need those affirmations, and even just like creating your own after like you've explored yourself a little bit. So I love that.
Thanks. So Andrea, any last parting words in terms of like mental health and Mental Health Awareness Month?
I would say take the time to like self-reflect. Everyone is deserving of a safe space and being able to put that out there. I always encourage everyone to go to therapy. If you're not going to, at least do some self-reflection. And don't let May just be the only month that you work on your mental health, right? Like whatever you're doing, let this month be the month that you're setting like the groundwork for to continue throughout the year, you know, until next year when we celebrate again.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yes, I loved it.
Yeah.
And thank you everyone at home or at work, wherever you are listening to this. We appreciate you for listening in. Again, my name's Nisha. This is PCCS. This is emPower Hour. We hope you have a wonderful May, and we hope you take some time to focus on your mental health.